All right. Firstly, to everyone, we've had a very successful, high-level trip. Firstly, to New York, to the 77th United Nations Assembly meeting, which was where our Prime Minister read the country statement, which I'm sure you've already heard about what our country's doing and where we plan to go forward into the future, and the problems that we face and how we can address them when we all work together as one. So New York is a very fast and bustling city. It's the home of the United Nations Assembly. We actually had all the Pacific Island leaders were there as well, with all the world leaders. We were able to listen to all the world leaders' speeches as well, and that was a very positive thing to know what's happening and around the world, and the thoughts of all the world in different circumstances. We are very lucky in Papua New Guinea that we don't have the wars, the problems that many other countries are facing. But our Prime Minister's speech was about the country moving forward, ensuring that our natural resources are well looked after and maintained and conserved, ensuring our borders are protected, and ensuring we have national security throughout our region. I also, as the Foreign Minister, spoke and gave a statement at the 77 group. It's called Group of 77 and China. And this is about 77 countries of the General Assembly, United Nations General Assembly, talking about their role in the region, which includes China as well. It's a group that was formed of 77 sovereign countries to work moving forward for the benefit of their countries and the relationships they have in Southeast Asia, and the security and economic and trade that they can do all together. I was very privileged to give a statement to that assembly of 77 foreign affairs ministers and leaders, talking about what we can do together for how we can benefit from trade and economics and business together in that region with those 77 countries. It was set up to work with the big country or the big nation, like sovereign nation like China, who is one of the biggest economic countries in the world. So at the United Nations, there's no going against anybody. Everybody's equal, and everybody can say what they like. If the one country doesn't like another country, they'll make sure they say it. The US said that, Iran said that, Israel said that. It's a way that you can express yourselves and the problems that you have with others throughout the world. So that was a great experience, and our government was well received by especially the Pacific Island countries. Our Prime Minister spoke about how we need to all work together as a team, especially to the lead up of the summit that was held in Washington, DC. So for the 77th United Nations General Assembly, it hadn't been held in nearly 3 years because of COVID. So it was a good way of all the world leaders coming together and talking about their problems and how they can resolve it within themselves, and have bilateral meetings and catch up for lost time. So it's all about connectivity, it's all about getting together, it's all about talking to one another, it's all about resolving long outstanding issues that countries might have had in the past, and bringing everyone together in one united fashion. With that, we had over 12 Pacific Island leaders and countries, all at the United Nations, which we all then went 2 days later to the Washington, D.C. And I must admit, for first time to being in Washington, D.C., it's a beautiful city of the United States of America. Museums, monuments, well organized, well manicured, well clean, tidy, a beautiful place of the United States. From there, all the Pacific Island leaders, we all met at different meetings. The first meeting we had was at the Pacific Islands Country Leaders Summit, which was with the Secretary of State. Each leader of the Pacific Islands had a turn and a chance to comment on different subject matters concerning the Pacific. These were prioritizing climate crisis. Most of these small island countries are in diabolical situation where the seas are now rising, their crops are all dying, they've got no food sources other than what's in the sea, and they're losing their homes where they are. Discussions with the US, the United States of America have put up $800 million to attack climate change and to assist in infrastructure development on the Pacific Island countries only. This is all about coming in and assisting when it comes to climate change issues and those countries that are being affected by climate change. Now, with climate change as well, the Prime Minister made it very clear that Papua New Guinea is the biggest lungs of the world other than the Congo and the Amazon. So when we are not an emitter, we are an absorber. We must look more in the forestry sector. We must look more at protecting our forests. And it was agreed at that meeting that the total ban of logging in most of these countries should be adopted ASAP for the sake of rising sea levels and ensuring that we keep to that 1.5 degrees limit that has been set so that our country doesn't turn into a disaster for our future generations going forward. So climate change and climate crisis was the main agenda on everybody's lips from the Pacific Islands. They are feeling it through hurricanes, tornadoes, tidal waves, natural disasters, rising sea levels. So it's a big, big issue, and that was the main thing that was discussed. For us, we're being affected in the islands of Manus, New Ireland, and of course the coral atolls in Milne Bay, and also down the Mudlock Islands and in Bougainville as well. We are feeling it with sea rises coming up and destroying our crops and the livelihoods of our people. So we also made it very clear that we have not been a recipient at all, a recipient of any funding or any support through carbon credit at all. Now, we are the third biggest lungs of the world, and we still haven't received any recognition for the way that we are now going to look after our forests. So the situation is that this is carbon credit, or they call them carbon credit cowboys, that are going around trying to do deals to make money out of this situation, was a big topic, and was also agreed to that this situation stop, because it's not actually working at all. At all. The setup of the Blue Pacific. The Blue Pacific is all the Pacific Islands countries coming together under the USA, United Kingdom, Australia, Germany, India, Japan. This Blue Pacific has been set up so that these countries will assist in protecting the natural resources and also the livelihoods and the islands of the Pacific countries all involved. And the Blue Pacific was gave commitment in funding and donations and that to support the Blue Pacific region for all these affected countries in the Pacific. That meeting was held by the Secretary of State, and this Blue Pacific will incorporates Papua New Guinea. As you know, we are the biggest country in the Pacific. We have the biggest population, biggest landmass, and I'm very proud of our Prime Minister. He promoted our country to the world, to the United States, but also taking in and supporting our smaller island countries as well, to make sure that they had a say, to make sure that they get recognised. That was very, very important. So the Prime Minister played a very good role as a mentor for our Micronesian countries, as well as our neighbours as well. With that as well, we also discussed and made detailed decisions on the protection of the sovereignty in the region of the Pacific and also maintaining security in the region. This was a big topic. Of course, China is always mentioned in these issues, but all countries were united in moving forward for what would you say, military-free or security secured Pacific into the future. Most of these countries deal with China, so the issue was more on economics and trade with China rather than defence or security at all. With that as well, in Washington, DC, I had personal one-on-one meetings, bilaterals, with the Deputy Secretary of State, who looks after the Pacific and the Indo region, the Secretary of State. Also, I had a very important meeting with Dr. Kurt Campbell, who is the Assistant to the President of the United States, where we discussed many issues, and one of them, of course, was the opening of the new American United States Embassy in the Mosby South District of this city, which will be opened in December this year. It's one of the biggest embassies that they've built in the Pacific in this region, and they will be having a high profile, definitely high profile delegation of leaders from the US to come and officially open the new US Embassy for the Pacific region here. So that's something to look forward to, which will open up a lot of opportunities and roll out a lot of our programs and projects in Papua New Guinea as well, and make it much easier for us to move forward with the new embassy, which will be nearly double their capacity from where they were before. One of the exciting agreements that will be finalised by December is called the Ship Riders Agreement. Now, what's a Ship Riders Agreement? What does it mean? Well, it's about putting Papua New Guineans on US Coast Guard or Defence Force ships in our region. It's about training them. It's about having Papua New Guineans working side by side the United States on their military vessels, protecting our waters from illegal fishing, human smuggling, illegal logging, and of course drug smuggling as well. Now, this is going to cost millions of kina that the US government will cater for. This will also connect us to the satellite system, where all boats in our waters around Papua New Guinea will be observed and monitored from satellites to allow us to know who is fishing in our waters, who is taking out our fish, who are illegal logging ships going to their countries without doing the proper process, and so on. So this shipwrights agreement is in process of being signed. We'd like to have it signed here in Papua New Guinea with all our delegates, US delegates, by the end of this year, in December, when they open the embassy. We are in contact with the PNG Defence Force. This is a Defence Force issue. The Major General is well aware of this program. We're coming to the end of it now, and we'll be working closely with the PNG Defence Minister as well as the Major General to get it over the line so that all our seas, all our waters, sovereign waters of Papua New Guinea are protected for the first time with the assistance of the United States. Working closely together, of course, with the Australian government. So this is a game changer for Papua New Guinea, and this has been sitting on the table for quite a long time. So it's my direction from the Prime Minister and from our meetings that we had, the bilaterals, that this is number one priority to protect our waters, protect our people, protect our asset and our sovereign right as a country. So we look forward to that signing deadline we've put at December this year. And we'll work with the State Solicitor, the Attorney General and the Department of Justice to make sure everything is done correctly and properly through the right process, with the Defence Force, of course, taking the lead. Foreign Affairs is there to partner everybody, make sure that things come together in the appropriate manner through our different bilaterals and country issues. With that as well, the US government moving forward with Papua New Guinea Defence Force and our different departments like Fisheries and Customs and Commerce will be finalising the Defence Cooperation Agreement. This cooperation agreement is bringing all of us together for the protection of our region. It's quite an in-depth document. It's quite a detailed cooperation and statement that will bring our traditional partners together. Our traditional partners are, as you know, America, New Zealand and Australia. But this Defence Force agreement, cooperation agreement, is with the United States to assist us in building up the capacity of the PNG Defence Force and protecting our sovereignty of our country and putting stability in our region. So it's all about building the capacity of the PNG Defence Force, building up our assets that have deteriorated for many years, building up our capabilities as well as a Defence Force, and making us bigger and better than we've done before, which will have a lot of spin-offs, economic spin-offs, trade spin-offs for Papua New Guineans that run small business or companies in Papua New Guinea. So we look forward to finalising that agreement that has been gathering dust for a while. For me, it's about implementing and getting the job done. And from this meetings in the USA and Washington, we now have seen where the issues are. We now can resolve them by sitting face to face, and going over these issues makes it so much easier for us now to move forward in this regard. So these are exciting times ahead for the security and for protecting our natural resources. While I was in Washington, DC, I was very lucky to catch up and have a one-on-one meeting with the Foreign Affairs Minister of India, one of the up-and-coming biggest countries in in economic trade and stability in our region, especially Southeast Asia. With that, we have agreed that the first quarter of next year, there will be an Indian PNG summit where the Indian Prime Minister and the Foreign Affairs Minister and his team will have the first historical visit to Papua New Guinea. We have never had a Prime Minister of India come to PNG before, and they are keen for our relationship to grow bigger and better, especially in trade and in manufacturing and in economic cooperation between both countries. So this brings a new light to our relationship in Southeast Asia, especially with India. And we have a lot to learn from India, and we have a lot to gain from India. And the Foreign Affairs Minister was very excited, very happy that we finally got together. And with that, we will hold a summit here in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, first quarter next year, to talk about the way forward and how our countries can benefit from each other, and not just talk about it. Put it in black and white, put it in concrete, set it in stone, so we can actually see outcomes from it, physically. So the Foreign Minister and I were on the same page. We lost about 2.5 years because of COVID. That's why these meetings and that did not happen. But we look forward to a new relationship and a new chapter for the relationship between India and Papua New Guinea going forward in early next year. So we've got a lot to do in that regard. Otherwise, for all our meetings, the most important thing is that the United States, through its Pacific Islands Country Summit, made some big inroads and big promises. And maybe this has been caused by Solomon Islands and China, but it's been a wake-up call for the region, a wake-up call. And people can say what they like, but at the end of the day, the United States, through President Biden, have made some big commitments and solid foundations for the Pacific, not just now, but now and for the years to come. Long term. So you'll be seeing more input from the US in Papua New Guinea in many different ways, through projects, through security, through economic empowerment, and infrastructure development. They will, of course, partner with Australia at the same time, but the US alone want to be a bigger part of the Pacific and help our brothers and sisters that are suffering because of climate change issues. One of the very sad points that a lot of the countries made was that, so what happens if our islands go underwater? What happens to our sovereignty? Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? Are we no longer a country anymore? Who are we? We're going to be homeless, stateless. So these questions were put very strongly to the President, to the Secretary of State, to how the US can come and assist. And the reason why the US are feeling probably a little bit guilty is because they're the biggest ones that cause the climate change in our world, biggest emissions. They produce the most of the problems that we are facing. So with that, they feel obligated that they have to help in this situation. And the Pacific Island countries, including Papua New Guinea, made sure that it wasn't just one way. They heard the truth from everybody. Some leaders were very emotional on where they're going to stand in the next 10 to 20 years. So the US have made some huge commitments to counteract from, if you call it, their wrongdoings, and to cut down on the emissions that are going out for the benefit of the whole world. So that was the 14-day trip. It was quite extensive. Every day we had meetings with all different leaders, bilaterals. It was what I would say for my first official duty was a great success. Our embassy in the United Nations, our mission there in the United Nations in New York are doing a fantastic job. The staff there are working tremendously to hold the fort for Papua New Guinea in the United Nations. And of course our Washington DC embassy as well is going full strength and did a fantastic job while we're there. We need to assist them in maintaining the embassy properly. I visited personally the mission and the embassies to see how they live, how they work, how they're doing, and the issue is that they are doing not too bad. We have a new ambassador to the United States, for Washington DC, who was appointed by NEC last year, or beginning of this year I should say, and that is Sir Arnold Ahmet, the former Chief Justice of Papua New Guinea. He has been appointed to be the ambassador to Washington DC, and I think we couldn't have chosen a better statesperson to hold that position. So we will work with him. I believe he'll take office by end of this year or by January next year to Washington DC. So from there as well, the embassy of Papua New Guinea, the Ambassador Max Saraya is now he's now finishing his term too, so he'll be coming back, and we'll be appointing a new ambassador for the mission of the United Nations as well. So a lot of things happening, a lot of positive things. It's good to see the United States stepping up, taking responsibility of their own actions, and working with all the Pacific Island nations to assist for the long term now and into the future. And from there, as you probably heard already, our Prime Minister had one-on-one meetings with President Biden 3 times. I've never heard that in the history of any relationship with the US. They have had very constructive meetings on many issues, and especially the dinner at the White House was enabled them to be in a more relaxed environment where they spoke with all the other Pacific Island leaders as well. So many things going forward. For us here at Foreign Affairs, finally, we have a lot of work to do to implement the bilateral talks and agreements that need to be finalised before December this year. And as I said, the shipwriters agreement is one, and we'll work closely with Department of Justice as well as the Defence Force to finalise that immediately, and also the Defence Corporation Agreement, which is to secure our waters and protect our sovereignty of our country as well. But the biggest one is the announcement by the President that will be rolling out through the Department of Commerce, through their Department of Foreign Affairs, the State Department in the United States, $800 million worth of aid projects and infrastructure for the Pacific Islands region only. So we need to grab that, utilize that, and make sure we take that for the benefit of our country in many different projects that we can benefit for our people throughout the country as well.